So let's start a very, very interesting remedy today. We'll talk about the remedy which became very popular a couple of years back. We'll talk about camphora. Camphora, the remedy, the drug picture of camphora, or the inner patterns of camphora. Camphora belongs to the magnolid family, avocado family in that way. And I think camphor is one of the most well-known remedies in homeopathy, known as the universal antidote. I'll just go over some very important keynotes of camphor that we all should know, and we already know. So number one, the body is extremely cold to touch, and also they are exceedingly sensitive to cold. So very, very chilly and cold to touch. This is the very, very important kind of phenomenon in camphor. Sudden collapse with sudden coldness. You know that Master Hahnemann treated many, many difficult cases of epidemic diseases where there was scanty discharges and coldness. This was the two keynotes. If it was profuse discharges and coldness, he would often go more towards Viractrum, but if it was scanty discharge and coldness, he would go more often to camphora. Last line in Allen's keynote, all sequels of measles. Yeah. One very interesting, when thinking of existing complaints, ameliorate is an interesting phenomenon of camphor. Pains better when thinking of it, like hellebores. And this is something that we already know. This is well written in books. I'm trying to understand a pattern of camphor. And hopefully, by the end of it, we will come to a point where we will learn something interesting. And I've prescribed camphor a few times, and I'm going to tell you what is one of the first things I see about camphor. One of the main patterns of camphora I see are they are quite clinging. They are kind of people who are quite needy and very clinging, not very developed in that way. Not like Aurum metallicum, who are quite confident, who are quite independent, but they're quite clinging. They're quite clinging. That's one of the very important kind of phenomena of camphor. Here you can also understand company desire for at night. At night is when everything is dark. And that's when they want someone. So it's very typical of camphor. The other very interesting kind of rubric which I kind of use to understand camphora a lot, which I'm going to try to show you, is given by Nair, and he writes, delusion, she has her own little world in which things are clear and outside is uncertain. It's a very, very beautiful rubric of camphora. This gives you an idea that camphora wants to be in a comfort zone. Camphora wants to be in a world where they are on their own. They want in their own world, their own family, their own friends, their own work. They cannot tolerate change too much. They can't tolerate too much of change, too much of suddenly COVID has come in, suddenly everything is on lockdown, suddenly my close friend went away, suddenly from Mumbai I'm going to Delhi. Sudden change, I'm not able to take. Because she's not so developed to kind of, in a way, digest these kind of changes. So, because in our own world, things are clear, things are easy, there's a comfort zone, it's kind of a second nature for her. But little outside the shell, little outside that comfort zone, she's, what is all of this? This is very complicated for me. I'm okay in my simple way. This is the idea. So this is very beautiful rubric. I read it again, and this is not just another rubric. This is by Nair, which means it has origin in herring guiding symptom. Delusion, she has her own little world in which things are clear, outside is uncertain. So interesting. Very interesting rubric. So anything outside is very horrible. Delusion, horrible visions. Delusion, monsters. Everything outside is too big. How will I do this? How will I manage this? What is all of this? How to do this? Too much for them. Too much to handle. Too much situation is too intense for them. Camphora. Delusion sees phantoms, images at night. At night, again, night is when everything is dark, no one is around, scared. Light is where she's comfortable. Dark is something she's uncomfortable. And that is when they try to start praying, God help me, God help me. And that's where I believe Camphora may sometimes looks a little bit like Stramonium or Solanaceae family, Hyoscyamus, Belladonna. They start praying. So there is a beautiful rubric by Allen, Delusion Forsaken by God, because they constantly, they cling to people in and around, and that's why also cling to God. God help me, God, 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 God. Camphor, angel. Very interesting. Delusion deserted, forsaken. It's a very interesting pattern of camphor. This is one layer of pattern. This is one layer of camphor. And there are different layers. Sometimes in a kind of acute state, in a later on state, Camphora starts becoming maniacal. This is when their state kind of becomes very different. And this is where it comes very close to Hyoscyamus. So you can see the rubric, naked wants to. Naked wants to impulse to jump out of window. Naked wants to be exposed his chest constantly in mania. So you can see this kind of sexual mania, nymphomania. Almost gives you an idea of Hyoscyamus. But in Hyoscyamus, it's more vulgarity. In Camphora, they go into this kind of state from this innermost state of a kind of they are too primitive to understand change, to go out of their comfort zone. Camphora, angel, Camphora. You can see some interesting rubrics. Laughing and weeping at the same time. You can see that maniacal disorder. And that's why it's also a very important remedy, Camphora, in acute psychiatric conditions if you're treating. Kill desire. Thought he ought to kill somebody. Jumping desire from dreams. Insanity. Insanity laughing. Insanity erotic sexual. Loquacious staring. Because insanity rolls in her own filth, in her own shit. Horrible thing, sad story affect her profoundly. Howling, a little fear, and they are so scared they howl. Camphora, many gestures beating on chest, gestures bystanders at. Typical Camphora. Forsaken feeling, doesn't feel loved by people in and around. Foolish behavior. Swallows your own feces like mercury. A lot of fears. And fears, if you read, may give you almost an experience of a remedy like Belladonna, Stramonium, Hyoscyamus. Have a look. Fear of death, being alone. Fear of evil. Fear of bed. Fear of dark. Fear of being alone. Fear children in. Almost gives the idea of Solanaceae. No? What's the difference? The difference is the rubric that I showed you. This delusion, she has her own little world in which things are clear. Outside is uncertain. And now she's kind of scared of moving into a new world. Camphora. Camphora. Delirium goes into a raging, maniacal delirium. Violent delirium. They almost go wild at that state. Wildness. So this is like a very acute, violent state that a later stage of Camphora in an acute stage may go into. It's a very interesting remedy. I've used it a few times as well. A lot of desire for alcohol, cold drinks, even with chilliness, they want cold drinks. Yeah. Desire for stimulants. Camphora, region. Constant feeling of being deserted, also written by Manjliovori. Forsaken feeling, again written by Manjliovori. Gives you a good idea of withdrawal from reality. They want to go away from reality because the reality is too harsh. They may go into addiction, they may go into drugs, they may go into all these things. Camphora line gel. So that's a little pattern of Camphora. I would like you to use it, study it, apply it, and share the experience. Write to me. My email ID is down. And if you want to study, if you find this interesting, you want to study with us, we have an entire online course where we have step-by-step training on organ, on materia medica repertory, where I would be mentoring you. It will be absolute pleasure to study with you. Write to me.